In the heart of the vast, sun-kissed lands of present-day West Africa lay the kingdom of Akanu, a realm unlike any other. For generations, Akanu had only known queens, wise, strong, and revered by their people. The kingdom had never seen a male heir ascend to the throne, and so the rule of queens had become their tradition. But there was a prophecy, one whispered among the elders and seers, that foretold a powerful king who would rise to unite all the kingdoms across the western lands. This king would be a great warrior, a commander of unmatched authority, who would bring both peace and conquest to Akanu and its neighbors. Queen Irima, the current ruler, was with child, and she prayed fervently that her unborn would be the son spoken of in the prophecy. Her kingdom was at peace, but she knew that peace was fragile and could shatter with the turn of fate. As she carried the hope of the prophecy in her womb, her heart was filled with both hope and fear, for she understood the weight of destiny that lay upon her. In the shadows, General Adoki, the commander of Akanu's formidable army, harbored his own beliefs about the prophecy. A warrior of great renown, Adoki had led countless campaigns, toppling kings and subduing kingdoms. His victories were the stuff of legend, and he believed that the prophecy spoke of him, that he was destined to be the king who would bring the land under one banner. He waited patiently, his ambitions concealed behind a mask of loyalty, waiting for the right moment to seize the throne he believed was rightfully his. While on a campaign in the neighboring kingdom of Azumiri, General Adoki dealt a crushing blow to its rulers. The king of Azumiri and his family were slain, their reign extinguished by Adoki's sword. Yet amidst the carnage, he spared one life, that of Ezin, the royal healer, a woman of mysterious origins from the nearby village of Mbanisi. Her skills were unmatched, and though she could not save the fallen king, her life was spared in what seemed an uncharacteristic act of mercy by the general. Perhaps he saw in her some use for the future, or perhaps it was a rare moment of compassion. Regardless, she was allowed to live. As Adoki celebrated his victory in Azumiri, word reached him that Queen Irima had gone into labor, eager to return to Akanu and claim his destiny. Adoki quickly left Azumiri, placing his trusted men in charge of the conquered lands. But when he arrived in Akanu, his hopes were dashed. The queen had died in childbirth, but not before giving birth to a son, the heir to the throne, the prince destined to fulfill the prophecy. General Adoki, consumed by his ambition, saw the newborn prince as a threat. The kingdom was still reeling from the news of the queen's death, and no official announcement had been made about the prince. Adoki seized the opportunity to act. He gathered the people of Akanu and informed them of the queen's tragic death, painting himself as a loyal servant, mourning his beloved queen. The people, grieving and fearful of the uncertain future, turned to Adoki, pleading with him to guide them in this dark time. They whispered of making him king, the leader who had led them to countless victories. But Adoki had a darker plan. He instructed his trusted aide, Akanu, to dispose of the infant prince, ensuring that the child who could one day challenge him would never live to do so. He also ordered the midwives who had delivered the prince to be silenced forever. No one would know of the prince's existence. Akanu, however, was torn. He was a soldier, yes, but he was also a man with a conscience. As he held the innocent baby in his arms, he found himself unable to carry out the order. The thought of killing the child weighed heavily on his soul. Instead, he fled into the forest, cradling the prince, unsure of what to do next. As Akanu wandered deeper into the woods, he came upon a weary figure walking along a lonely road. It was Ezine, the healer from Azumiri, who was returning to her village of Mbanisi. She looked up in surprise as Akanu approached her, the baby prince bundled in his arms. "The gods have decided to make you a mother, woman," Akanu said, his voice filled with both sorrow and resolve. Ezine, taken aback, stared at the child. "My lord, I am barren," she whispered, her voice tinged with despair. "I sought healing for myself, a healer who cannot heal her own womb." Akanu looked at her with pity. "Perhaps the gods have their reasons." "Where are you headed?" "To Mbanisi, my village," she replied. "The king of Azumiri was slain by General Adoki. I tended to him before his death. The general spared my life." Akanu nodded solemnly. "Take this child, Ezine. Raise him as your own. Never speak of where he came from, and never bring him to Akanu. Let him grow in the shadows, far from the eyes of men. His mother is gone, and now you are the only mother he will ever know. Raise him well, like a prince." Ezine hesitated, but then took the child into her arms. She felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility and an inexplicable connection to the boy. She watched as Akanu disappeared into the forest, leaving her with the infant who would change the course of history. Back in Akanu, General Adoki assumed control, his rule swift and ruthless. He believed the prince was dead, Akanu having assured him that the deed was done. With no heir to challenge him, Adoki waged war on the neighboring kingdoms, his ambitions growing with each victory. But one kingdom eluded him, Mbanisi, ruled by the formidable king Ebubeagu, a warrior as mighty as Adoki himself. Years passed, and the tale of Queen Erima's lost son faded into legend. No one in Akanu knew of Kamalu, as Ezine named the prince, who was growing up in the village of Mbanisi. Under Ezine's care, Kamalu thrived, learning the ancient arts of healing and harmony. He became a strong, handsome young man, known throughout Mbanisi for his skill and wisdom. His reputation even reached the ears of King Ebubeagu, who summoned Kamalu to his palace to heal a mysterious ailment. It was there, in the palace of Mbanisi, that Kamalu met Prince Ikena, the heir to the throne of Mbanisi. The two young men formed a bond that was unbreakable, their friendship deepening with each passing day. Ikena, impressed by Kamalu's abilities and character, even suggested that Kamalu marry his sister and become part of the royal family. But destiny had other plans for Kamalu, the orphan prince who was unaware of the true legacy that lay in his blood. As Kamalu grew into a young man, his reputation as a skilled healer spread far and wide throughout the kingdom of Mbanisi. But Kamalu was not content with only the knowledge of healing. He yearned to be more, to learn the ways of a warrior. With the encouragement of Prince Ikena, Kamalu enrolled in the regiment army of Mbanisi, where he quickly distinguished himself. His training was rigorous, but Kamalu's determination and natural abilities set him apart. He mastered techniques that even the most seasoned warriors struggled with, blending his knowledge of the body and its vulnerabilities with the art of combat. His prowess in battle became the talk of the kingdom, earning him respect and admiration from both soldiers and civilians alike. Ezine watched with pride as the boy she had raised grew into a man of great skill and honor. The people of Mbanisi spoke highly of Kamalu, and Prince Ikena was especially proud to call him a friend. Their bond had only strengthened over the years, and Ikena often confided in Kamalu, sharing both his joys and his burdens. One day, as was their tradition, Kamalu and Prince Ikena embarked on a hunting expedition in the dense forests surrounding the kingdom. The day was warm, and the forest was alive with the sounds of nature. As they stalked their prey, their conversation turned to more personal matters. "When are you going to take your wife?" Akanu asked with a grin, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "She's a lady now, Kamalu. Nothing would make me happier than to have you as my brother. Or are you not in love with my sister?" Kamalu hesitated, a rare uncertainty in his voice. "I am, but I fear the king's reaction. He may prefer a royal suitor for his daughter, someone more suitable." Prince Akanu stopped and turned to face Kamalu, his expression serious. "A royal suitor?" he repeated, almost scoffing at the idea. "Who among the young men in this kingdom is more regal than you? My friend, you don't look any less than a prince to me. And that reminds me, the other day at the shrine, the diviner called you a prince, even though he knows full well the background of your family." Kamalu looked down, the weight of Akanu's words pressing on him. "I don't want to anger the king," he said softly. "I'm afraid of what he might say." Akanu placed a reassuring hand on Kamalu's shoulder. "The king will be overjoyed to have you as one of his sons," he said confidently. "You've earned the respect of this entire kingdom, Kamalu, and you have my blessing." Just then, the rustle of leaves announced the arrival of Princess Adaize, Akanu's younger sister. She approached them with a graceful smile, her presence lighting up the forest. Akanu, noticing the tension between his friend and his sister, smiled knowingly. "I'll leave you two to talk," Akanu said with a wink, before turning and walking away, leaving Kamalu alone with Adaize. Kamalu's heart raced as he looked at Adaize, the woman he had secretly loved for years. But now, standing before her, he found himself unsure of how to express the depth of his feelings. The weight of his unknown lineage, the prophecy, and the words of the diviner echoed in his mind. What did the future hold for him, and could he dare to hope for a life with the woman he loved? In the kingdom of Akanu, General Adoki's thirst for power had grown insatiable. Once a revered warrior, he had become a tyrant, driven by an overwhelming desire to conquer all the kingdoms in the western regions. His covetousness knew no bounds, and his rule was marked by oppression and fear. One day, while riding through the streets with his guards, Adoki's gaze fell upon a young, beautiful woman named Adore. Captivated by her beauty, he immediately ordered one of his aides to bring her to his chambers. Adore was with her young husband, Emenike, the son of Akanu, who had been a faithful ally to Adoki. The aide approached Adore and Emenike with a cold command. "The king demands your presence in his chambers," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Emenike, stunned by the demand, stepped forward. "Why does the king summon my wife? What business does he have with her?" The guards ignored his questions and forcibly took Adore away. Emenike, helpless to stop them, watched in horror as his wife was dragged off. Desperate and furious, he ran to his father's house to inform him of the king's outrageous act. When Emenike burst into Akanu's home, his words tumbled out in a rush. "Father, the king has taken Adore. He sent his guards to take her by force. What could he possibly want with her?" Akanu, loyal to Adoki for many years, struggled to believe what he was hearing. "The king knows you well, my son. He knows Adore is your wife. He was present when the traditional marriage rites were performed. Why would he do such a thing?" Emenike's voice trembled with anger. "I have served him faithfully, as have you. He has countless women in his harem. Why would he covet my wife?" Realizing the gravity of the situation, Akanu's expression hardened. "We must see him immediately. This cannot be left unresolved." Together, father and son hurried to the palace, their hearts heavy with fear and anger. Inside the palace, Adore found herself in General Adoki's chambers, standing her ground, despite the king's lecherous advances. "I am married, my king," she declared, her voice steady. "I am the wife of Emenike, Ekene's son. I will not betray my husband." Adoki, amused by her defiance, smirked. "Married to Emenike? You deserve more than a life bound to someone so far down the food chain, my dear. This is your chance for a better life. I can make your father, Anosike, a lord in your clan." But Adore's resolve did not waver. "I love my husband, and I will never betray him, not for anything in this world." Seeing that his attempts at persuasion were failing, Adoki's expression darkened. He called for his guards to pin Adore down, determined to have his way. But before they could reach her, Adore's hand shot out, grabbing a dagger from a nearby table. Her eyes burned with defiance as she spoke her final words. "I will never bring shame to my family." In one swift motion, Adore plunged the dagger into her chest, ending her life before Adoki could dishonor her. The general watched in shock as her lifeless body crumpled to the ground, his plan shattered by her unyielding spirit. Emenike and Akanu arrived at the palace, their hearts heavy with unease. Emenike's desperation to save Adore was palpable, his pleas to his father relentless during their journey. Akanu, though skeptical of the rumors of Adoki's actions, hoped that his loyalty to the general would be enough to bring his son's wife home safely. They were led into the courtyard, where a grim silence hung in the air. A group of soldiers stood watch, their faces devoid of emotion. Adoki's aide approached, his expression cold. Without a word, he gestured toward a covered pallet lying on the ground. "This is what remains of her," the aide said flatly, his voice devoid of remorse. Emenike froze, unable to comprehend the words. Slowly, he stepped forward, his hands trembling as he lifted the cloth. Beneath it lay Adore's lifeless body, her face pale yet serene, as though she had died holding on to her pride. The sight broke something within him. He let out a wail that echoed through the courtyard, his knees buckling beneath him as he cradled her in his arms. Akanu stood rooted to the spot, the weight of the scene crushing him. His mind raced, battling disbelief and guilt. How had it come to this? His allegiance to Adoki had cost his family dearly, watching his son sob over the woman who had been so brutally taken from them. Akanu felt something shift deep within. A lifetime of loyalty, of blind service, crumbled in an instant. Adoki appeared on the balcony above, his expression indifferent. "Take your grief and leave my sight," he commanded. "Her life was inconsequential, and her defiance left me no choice. You should have taught her obedience." Emenike's sobs turned into a guttural roar. He looked up at Adoki, his face streaked with tears and fury. "You will pay for this," he vowed. "I swear it on her grave." Akanu placed a hand on his son's shoulder, steadying him. His own voice, steady and cold, cut through the tension. "You have taken too much, Adoki. This kingdom will not endure your tyranny much longer." They left the palace carrying Adore's body, their grief heavy, but their resolve even heavier. The funeral was a quiet, somber affair, attended only by close family and a few trusted friends. As the fire consumed the pyre, Emenike's gaze was unflinching, his hands clenched into fists. "Enough," Akanu said that night, his voice filled with a new determination. "Adoki has lost the right to rule. His greed, his cruelty, it ends here." "I will fight," Emenike replied, his voice hoarse from crying. "For her, for every life he's destroyed. Akanu began reaching out to those within the kingdom who shared his sentiments. Old allies, disillusioned soldiers, and even oppressed citizens began to rally behind him. Slowly but surely, a rebellion took form in the shadows, its strength growing with each passing day. Meanwhile, Emanike sought out Kamalu in Mbanisi, knowing the young healer's reputation as both a warrior and a leader. Emanike arrived at the palace of King Ebubeagụ, his grief evident in his hollow eyes and sunken demeanor. He told Kamalu everything: the tyranny of Adoki, the injustice of Adara's death, and the suffering of their people. Kamalu listened, his heart aching for Emanike's pain and for the homeland he barely remembered. This was the moment he had always known would come, the moment when he would have to face the darkness of his origins. "I will return with you," Kamalu said firmly, not just to avenge her, but to reclaim what was stolen from all of us. Prince Akanu, ever loyal, offered to accompany Kamalu. Together they assembled a contingent of Mbanisi warriors to join the rebellion. King Ebubeagụ gave his blessing, but warned Kamalu of the cost. "If you go," he said, "you may not return the same man, but if you do not go, you will never find peace." As they prepared for the journey, Ades approached Kamalu. She took his hand, her eyes filled with both fear and hope. "Promise me you will come back," she whispered. "I promise," Kamalu replied, though his heart carried the weight of uncertainty. The rebellion in Akanu ignited with Akanu's forces, striking Adoki's loyalists. The kingdom descended into chaos as battle erupted. Kamalu and the warriors from Mbanisi arrived at the height of the conflict, their presence a beacon of hope for the oppressed. Amid the fighting, Akanu revealed the truth that had been hidden for years. Kamalu was the rightful heir to Akanu's throne. The revelation spread like wildfire, bolstering the rebels and shaking Adoki's forces. Kamalu, now seen as a savior, led the charge toward the palace. Adoki, desperate to retain his grip on power, sent his spies to sort out Ezine. He believed that by killing her, he could break Kamalu's spirit. When Kamalu discovered Ezine's lifeless body in the forest, his grief transformed into a righteous fury. The final confrontation between Kamalu and Adoki was brutal and personal. The two men fought in the ruins of the palace, their clash echoing through the halls. Kamalu, driven by the memories of those he had lost, delivered the killing blow, ending Adoki's reign of terror. Victory came at a cost. King Ebubeagụ and Prince Akanu were mortally wounded in the chaos. With their dying breaths, they entrusted the future of the kingdoms to Kamalu. "Unite them," Ebubeagụ said. "Bring the peace we could not." "Unite our kingdom, Akanu, with his final strength," said to Kamalu. "Take care of my sister, brother," he whispered. "You were always meant to be my brother." King Ebubeagụ and Prince Akanu were buried according to tradition, and Kamalu was married to Adaeze. The two kingdom unites as one. Kamalu, now king of Akanu and Mbanisi, fulfilled the prophecy. Under his reign, the two kingdoms flourished, united by peace and love. Adaeze stood by his side, a queen as strong and compassionate as the man she loved.